$15 million per hour, 15 years, has been spent on counterterrorism. $15 million per hour in 15 years since 9/11. The problem is not getting smaller. The problem is increasing. Something is not right. I work on counterterrorism because I feel for the victims, because of the impact on our daily routines, our freedoms. Our freedoms are at stake because of some of the measures that are taken. I'll talk about that later. What I do is try to understand the anger, and I'm going to share some of that information with you. Mind you, what I do is not talk to those people. I don't talk to the people at the top, not the al-Zawahiris and the Osama bin Ladens, the Shirkaus, no. I talk to the people that enter, the foot soldiers, those who feel attracted in the outskirts of Nairobi, the cities like Karachi, people that feel left out, people that feel excluded, that once had ambitions, human feelings, dreams, fears, and then at one stage get recruited and then kill because of their religion. I talked to that mother in Nairobi who told me about her son, and they said, I'm preaching him a non-violent, non-militant, moderate interpretation of Islam, but he says, Mother, you know what happens outside? You know about the corrupted police force that is abusive? I must make a fist, Mother. I talked last week to that commander of these Seleka, Central African Republic, who said, listen, we, the Muslims, we've always been marginalized. They don't even listen to us in Bangui. They don't share their resources with us. And then one day, the Christians come and kill us. I needed to defend myself. I took up arms, Peter, he says. I talked to that 2 weeks ago, to that young boy in Maiduguri, who said, listen, I'm in Nigeria, Nigeria is rich. We've got all that oil, all those resources. You think any of that will ever come to us in the north? No, it doesn't happen, Peter. We are not part of those who are in power and take the wealth of my country. There's patterns in what I see. And the patterns are visible from all the way from Indonesia via Pakistan into the Middle East, into Africa. There's hopelessness. People that sit and wait for the day to go by and know that they will never, ever get an education, let alone a job. People that have no access to power, political leadership, and that see that their leaders are corrupt. There's patterns. So there's exclusion. There's that sense that people are not part of the in-group and they're part of an out-group, basically for one reason only. Because they're a collective. They are excluded for who they are. Often on a religious basis. What I see happening is that these individuals start to reconnect from exclusion. They now go to inclusiveness. but they go to a reconnection in groups like in Palestine, like in China, the Uyghurs, who oppose their government because they feel excluded from the Chinese reality and political environment. I see that happening in Nigeria, Boko Haram. I see it in Kenya, Al-Shabaab. Individuals that feel excluded on the basis of a common characteristic, and that now reconnect and find friendship, comradeship in a group. From excluded to included. And they recognize each other's pain. They recognize each other's position. From Baghdad to Saudi Arabia, from Tunisia to the outskirts of Rotterdam, from Kazakhstan all the way down to Latin America, where it starts to emerge as well, even on the Balkans. It's going global. What strikes me in all my discussions with these people is that a lot of the anger that I find is not about what happens today, but it's about what happened yesterday. At first, this thing puzzled me. I didn't get it. I couldn't understand why they wouldn't live for the future, why they wouldn't take today as the first day of the rest of their lives, why always refer back to what happened. To understand this, we really need to understand the way people think. We think that time is something in front of us. Time is there. We live, we have an agenda, we have a plan for next year, we plan our careers, and the more we live, the less time we have. I live longer, so I have less time. That's exceptional. The majority of the people, 7 billion people in this world, look at time in a very different manner. Time is something behind them. The more you live, the more you have. You live longer, you have more time. You build up, you assemble. It's something that you grow. Time. It's clever. Now, if that is true, if time is something that you build up, then tradition, roots, ancestors, your parents, all that becomes important as a daily, today's reality. People feel solidarity with their parents, their grandparents, and unfinished business of the past. Now, this has a major impact. We fail to realize that. Because if they look at the past and they look at their luggage, they look at what they have assembled and what their parents have assembled and the unfinished business of the past, then this is what they see. Don't think that people out there don't know about Western domination, colonialism, about the fact that we came to christen them, to educate them, to bring them our way of life, our governance systems, our national borders, the way we decided that, and how we brought culture, and most of all, how we brought development, because they were obviously underdeveloped. Try to imagine that tomorrow a plane full of Chinese will come to develop you. Try to imagine. How would you react? That's what we've done. over the last couple of hundreds of years. We've developed them. So they're struggling with those national borders that we determined. Their national identity. They struggle with the question, who am I in terms of history, self-esteem, identity? Why am I underdeveloped? Don't think they don't know that when we came to Nigeria, Tanzania, the Philippines, that we didn't accept the Muslims. We didn't. We brought Christian missionaries. We brought our education. Today, we talked about unlearning. We talked about a different approach to education. They already had that. But we brought our way of educating people. So the message is clear. There. You look, you act, you behave like a Westerner, and you will be accepted. You don't look, behave, or act like us, and you won't. And this export of our culture, our way of life, our thinking, our religion, our development is still continuing. Today we export modernity. Modernity as the answer to everything. Now the interesting thing about modernity, it's an interesting concept. It focuses on individualism, market. We've talked about that today. About competition. Change, always change. If you live with tradition and your ancestors in the past, and modernity is about change, individualism, competition, opposition, then that modernity doesn't really fit in your own perception of your own identity. It doesn't fit. So there's a new conflict. And the worst thing about modernity is that it opposes both religion and tradition. It denies the value of it. By the way, hundreds of years ago, we went there to tell them they should be Christians, missionaries. Today we tell them, oh, sorry, mistake. We meant you need to be modern, not religious. We're trying to confuse people. It works. And all this confusion, and all this search for identity, and all this problem of self-esteem leads to the attraction of religion as a new solution to that search of identity and that search for self-esteem. Religion offers a new venue for people to find solidarity, guidance, rules, regulations, a solid house where people can live in. And that religion, mind you, is exported, the militant interpretation of religions is being exported from the Gulf to all these communities. But not only from the Gulf. It's not only the Wahhabism and Salafism that is exported as the solution to this problem. No, it comes from the other side as well. It's called Pentecostal, charismatic, backed by big money from the United States. And it competes with Salafism and Wahhabism. Remember the anti-Balaka and the Seleka in Central African Republic. maybe what happened in the Central African Republic is the precursor of what's going to happen globally in the time to come. So religion offers everything that modernity doesn't. It offers solidarity, it offers a house where you can live in, and it offers security, certainty, rules, regulation, and God Almighty, who's invaluable. Now, the attraction of religion is even bigger where the corrupt regimes do not offer a moral standard. It's bigger where there's no political alternative. It's bigger where the market competitive methodologies are dominant. It's bigger since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the bankruptcy of the only alternative political system that offered social responsibility. It was bankrupt, it didn't work, but there's no more alternative to the market system. And it's even more attractive where conflict resolution systems like the judiciary and the police are corrupt and are dysfunctional. My taxi driver in Bangui, the day before yesterday, said, listen, they gave me money to vote. There was this politician, he came and gave me money. I voted. I've never heard anything from him. Democracy. That is what democracy looks like in many places in this world. You get some money for your vote, and that's it. So where do we find the solution? I'm not going to leave you tonight depressed, loaded with problems. There's a solution to this. I'm going to give you 3 elements of the solution. First of all, there's this issue of trust. I'm not going to tell you a lot of news when I tell you that there's a trust issue between governments and citizens. Not only in Pakistan and in Nigeria, it's in many places. Distrust has become the leading guiding principle since 9/11. Governments don't trust their own citizens. They go through my emails. They go through my luggage. They follow my financial transactions. There's camera surveillance all over. Distrust is the guiding principle in the relationship between a government and a citizen. They don't trust me. They don't trust you. If distrust is the guiding principle of that relationship, then that relationship will go sour. Everybody who's ever been married knows that. You distrust your partner, oops, something is going wrong. So there's an urgent need to reintroduce trust between governments and citizens, not just in the United States, but also in Nigeria and Kenya and China. Secondly, and maybe even more importantly, religion offers a moral compass. It gives you values. If politicians want to compete, they will have to give moral values, moral standards. In its ultimate consequence, the market, modernity, has no values. I'm not the first one to know that tonight. But change is in the air. It was noted by somebody. Change is in the air. Banks are now offering services with values. You go to a shop, you find green and fair trade. Apparently, there's also non-fair trade. There's a lot of non-fair trade. And the consumers want products that are not produced with child labor, that do not have components that drive conflicts. Consumers want values, not just in the Netherlands, all over. And that change will come. Thirdly, and lastly, what 9/11 did is, in many places in the world, reduce the political landscape, the political space in which citizens can organize themselves. Because organizations are scary. Governments don't know what organizations do, so they reduce that space. Even in the Netherlands, the subsidies for civil society have been reduced. If you reduce that space, that means the citizens find other ways in which they organize themselves. Civil society must come back on the agenda, because the majority of people do not want humiliation. The majority of people do not want polarization, do not want the violence. Those voices must be facilitated to organize themselves and be heard urgently. Because only if we allow ourselves that discomfort, talking to the angry, engaging and connecting to them, only then can we solve terrorism. Thank you very much.